And Politics show where we discuss policy, investments, economic developments, and politics. It is Monday, June 29, 2019, and we'll be looking today at the following key issues this morning. The ProShare Research Economics Report Summary on Transportation, Manufacturing, and the Agro Sectors. Some of the ProShare Research Economics sub-national analysis on some of the states of the Federation. And excerpts from the Fiscal and Monetary Authority's conference call on policy steps for the Nigerian economy. Let us begin with the economics report for transportation and storage sector. This sector is made up of 6 activities which include road transport, rail transport and pipelines, water transport, air transport, transport services, and post and courier services. The transportation and storage sector grew by 2.82% in the first quarter of 2020 from minus 0.80% in the fourth quarter of 2019 and 19.50% in the corresponding quarter of first quarter 2019. In 2019, road transport grew by 2.83% overall. Rail transport and pipelines under transportation sector grew by 2.09%. Water transport recorded a slight growth of 0.08%. Air transport recorded the highest growth of 5.68%. Transport services contracted by minus 1.38%. Post and courier services contracted by minus 1.01%. Going by the reports, to curb the further spread of the coronavirus, there have been restrictions in international travels as well as interstate travels, which has negatively affected the air transport sector as some airline companies have laid off some staff, furloughed some of them, and have recorded significant rise in their debts. The lockdown in some parts of the country hindered the free movement of goods and services and hence limited some transporters' ability to generate income. It is predicted that the transport sector will record very slow growth in second quarter 2020 and the rest of the year, while it is expected to record full recovery in 2021. Let's go on to the manufacturing sector. It is comprised of 13 activities: oil refining, cement, food, beverages and tobacco, textile, apparel and footwear, wood and wood products, pulp, paper and paper products, chemical and pharmaceutical products, non-metallic products, plastic and rubber products, electrical and electronic, basic metal and iron and steel, motor vehicles and assembly, and other manufacturing. The disruptions of the global supply chain has negatively affected the manufacturing sector in Nigeria. The sector recorded slow growth in first quarter 2020. It grew by 0.43%, lower than the corresponding quarter in 2019 rate of 0.81% and the previous quarter, fourth quarter 2019 growth rate of 0.43%. Many manufacturers and service providers in the country are already experiencing an acute shortage of raw materials and intermediate inputs. This shortage has affected their capacity utilization, employment generation, adequacy of product supply to the domestic market, and has led to an increase in the cost of inputs, which are largely imported. Other challenges in the manufacturing sector attributable to the pandemic include an increase in foreign exchange risk and increasing operational costs, dipping sales as Nigerians are focused on staying alive. And key stakeholders in the manufacturing sector have continued to call on the federal government to give them priority in foreign exchange and also enable them with fiscal and monetary incentives. Let's go on to agriculture, which has been described as the mainstay of Nigeria's economy prior to the oil boom. COVID-19 has held a quantum impact on Nigeria's agricultural sector, as lockdowns, whether partial or full, have led to disruptions in the agricultural supply chain and created problems for small and large farm holders across the various states. Interstate transportation disruption and upward price adjustments have led to commodity price hikes and lower consumer demand after a point of inelasticity, creating what economists prefer to call a kinked demand curve. Travel restrictions, the closure of land borders, and the requirement of social distancing have combined to place both demand and supply chokeholds on farm gate products. Looking at this, COVID-19 has had a quantum impact on the sector, and this has continued to create challenges. Interstate transportation and other issues have continued to be the challenge of agro sector. The temporary lockdown in some states in Nigeria has harmed the farming and agriculture generally. The restrictions in movement of goods and people have affected farmers' productivity, as labor shortage has been a major issue in limited productive capacity and sales. Transport restrictions and quarantine measures have impeded farmers' access to markets. Access to inputs such as fertilizers has also faced problems. For example, the lockdown in China severely affected international fertilizer trade. The latest statistics released by the National Bureau of Statistics reveals that the agricultural sector grew by 2.20% in first quarter 2020 from 2.31% in the previous quarter, fourth quarter 2019, and 3.17% in the corresponding quarter of first quarter 2019. The major driver of the sector was crop production, which grew by 2.38% in first quarter 2020. Other subsector activities in the agricultural sector, which are livestock, forestry, and fishing, grew by 0.63%, 1.71%, and 1.49% respectively. Going forward, if the coronavirus persists, it is expected that the agricultural sector will experience slow growth in remaining quarters of the year on the backdrop of slow growth in sub-activities, which includes the crop production, livestock, forestry, and fishery, while we expect a recovery to set off in fourth quarter of 2020. Now let's get on to some of the states analysis, sub-national analysis, still from our per-share research economics table. And let's begin with Abia State. It's known as God's own state and has as governor His Excellency Odion Ikpeazu of the People's Democratic Party. Abia State is located in the southeast region of Nigeria. Abia State's total revenue declined by minus 40.78% to 66.81 billion naira in 2019 from 70.16 billion naira in 2018. Its Federal Account Allocation Committee provision accounted for 77.89% of total revenue, while its internally generated revenue accounted for 22.11%. Its two major sources of IGR in 2019 were its payee and revenue derived from its ministries, departments, and agencies. Revenue derived from payee and MDAs in 2019 were 5.91 billion naira and 5.8 billion naira respectively. In terms of domestic debt, Abia has an upward trending domestic debt, as its domestic debt increased yearly. Its highest domestic debt recorded was 68.76 billion naira in December 2019. Its domestic debt increased from 67.02 billion naira in December 2018 to 68.76 billion naira in December 2019. Looking at its external debt, Abia State's external debt declined by minus 2.02% in December 2019. Its external debt declined from $98.58 million in December 2018 to $96.59 million in 2019. That's December 2019. Let's go on to another state in the southeast, and that's Anambra, which has as its governor Chief Willie Obiano of the All Progressive Grand Alliance Party, APGA. Anambra State recorded an increase in its debts and revenue in 2019. Its total revenue increased by 7.66% in 2019, while its major source of IGR, that's internally generated revenue, is its payee. Anambra State's total revenue at the moment increased at 7.66% in 2019. Revenue increased from 74.56 billion naira in 2018 to 80.26 billion naira in 2019. The major source of its revenue in 2019 was from its FAC, while its FAC in 2019 was 53.89 billion naira, which was 67.15% total revenue, while its IGR was 26.37 billion naira, 32.5% of total revenue. In terms of IGR, Anambra State's two major sources of IGR are its payee and the MDA's revenue. In 2019, its payee accounted for 11.19 billion of total revenue, while its MDA's revenue accounted for 10.24 billion naira of total revenue. Its external debt between 2015 to 2019 shows that it grew slightly by 0.97% in 2019. Its external debt rose consistently from December 2015 to December 2019. Its highest external debt recorded was $108.08 million in December 2019. We move to Niger State, which is in the north-central region of Nigeria and has as its governor Alhaji Sani Bello of the All Progressive Congress. Niger State recorded a sum of 69.21 billion naira as revenue in 2019, which was the third in its region. The state relies mainly on its FAC allocation as its source of revenue. Niger State's revenue grew by 1.85% in 2019. Its total revenue in 2019 was 69.21 billion naira, an increase from 77.95 billion naira in 2018. Its allocated FAC accounted for 81.56%, which was about 56.45 billion naira of its total revenue, while its IGR accounted for 18.44%, which was 12.77 billion naira of its total revenue. Niger State's major source of IGR comes from the taxes it levied, with a major chunk from other taxes. It earned 7.07 billion naira from other taxes, while it earned 4.8 billion naira from payee. Looking at Niger State's domestic debt, Niger State's domestic debt grew by 45% in 2019. Its domestic debt recorded an upward trend from 2015 to 2019. Niger State's domestic debt has continuously been on the rise since 2015. The debt peaked at 60.61 billion naira in December 2019 from 41.8 billion naira in December 2018. Niger State's external debt at the moment peaked at $69.99 million in December 2019 from $61.35 million in December 2018. Its external debt has continuously been on the rise since December 2015. And let's now go to the Northeast. The Northeast is part of the region, has been adversely impacted by insurgency, where you have the highest amount of internally displaced persons. And Borno State, Wales, the epicenter of the crisis. Borno State has as its governor Professor Zulum. Professor Zulum is of the All Progressive Party. That's All Progressive Congress ruling party. Borno State is characterized by a low level of commercial activity as well as its high level of insecurity, which has impeded the growth of its economy. Its total revenue at the moment is, in 2019, was its FAC. That's its major source of revenue, was its FAC allocation. And its FAC accounted for 88.30% of its total revenue, while its IGR accounted for 11.70% of total revenue. That's for Borno State. Borno State also has major source of state IGR gotten from its payee. In 2019, its payee accounted for 4.19 billion naira, while the revenue generated from the MDAs was 2.3 billion naira. Borno State's domestic debt grew by 22.1% in 2019. Its domestic debt peaked at its highest in December 2019 and increased to 83.6 billion naira in December 2019 from 68.38 billion naira in December 2018. Its external debt declined by 20.86% in 2019. Its external debt has a downward trend. Its external debt declined from $21.62 million in 2018 to $17.11 million in 2019. Borno State recorded its lowest external debt of $17.11 million in December 2019. And now we'll go on a break, and when we return, we'll continue with other states and additional updates we have for the show.
We are actually battling with budget deficits. In the last 5 years, we consistently have budget deficits, and how we finance it? Through debts. And we're trying to borrow again. So it means that if we cannot generate enough revenue to cover our expenses, we'll be saddled with enormous debt. That debt servicing alone could take up a good chunk of our revenue. So how are we going to drive this revenue? We need to go beyond revenue from oil to look at non-oil revenue. And the low-hanging fruit for us is agriculture. Because when we have the arable land, we have the manpower, all we need is the right policy environment that could encourage investment in this sector. Don't forget that if you invest in agriculture, you don't get the money tomorrow. And our banking sector is such that they depend on very short-term lending. So if we can create that enabling environment that will encourage people to invest in agriculture, knowing fully well that you need some lead time, you need some moratorium before you can start benefiting from it. That's one. But the other thing is, I might say invest in agriculture, but we actually understand global standards that could enable us push exports. One of the reasons why we're not playing actively is that we are not familiar with the global standards. So you find a lot of agricultural products from Nigeria are rejected outside Nigeria. So we have to also do some domestic cleaning for us to understand how can we play effectively in the global market. So we need to understand those global standards. If you go back to AU Agenda 2063, it means bringing the African economics together. One way of doing it is having a single currency. The way you have Euro. Today, you look at there are three major forces shaping global economy: America, Europe, China. If we want to play effectively and having Africa, we need to have our own single currency. Whether you call it ECO, you call it Afro, whatever you call it, the problem that we need to move into having a single currency. What the Francophone countries have done is to move ahead faster. Remember that they always have that single currency backed by France. It's for us to decide, can we sit down and discuss that? It is not just for them alone. How can we have a global currency? It may start with ECOWAS, but eventually it should be a single African currency.
Welcome back, and let's go on to Adamawa State, also in Northeast region, with His Excellency Adamu Fintiri, the governor of the state, who is also from the People's Democratic Party. Adamawa in most recent times has been overwhelmed by banditry. The state relies significantly on revenue from FAC allocation. The state's huge dependence on FAC is abnormally large. The state is potentially one of the country's bread baskets. With rich and verdant land and a strong farming culture, the state has massive potential to drive an agricultural revolution in the country. Looking at the strategic approach, Adamawa State can attract large-scale agricultural companies into the state if its philosophy is private sector-led. The COVID-19 period provides a great opportunity for the state to upscale agriculture to the use of technology, a major factor in breaking poverty cycles, according to late Professor Clayton Christensen, Efosa Ojomo, and Karen Dillon in their award-winning book, The Prosperity Paradox. Adamawa may need to do the following in terms of strategy and transformation: shift to more mechanized modes of farming, adopt cattle ranching as a system of nurturing animal protein and providing leather as inputs for the fashion, automobile, and furniture industries. The cattle reared could also provide milk and yogurt as inputs to other businesses such as confectionaries. Mining activities should be formalized, with artisanal activities eased out as larger and better equipped corporations are encouraged to mine. Adamawa State derived 83.28% of its total revenue from FAC, while 16.72% of its revenue was derived from its IGR in 2019. Its total revenue earned in 2019 was 58.04 billion naira. Its allocated FAC in 2019 was 48.34 billion naira, while its IGR was 9.7 billion naira. Adamawa State's IGR, major source of it was its payee. In 2019, Adamawa State recorded a payee of 5.75 billion naira, while its MDA generated a total of 3.03 billion naira. Adamawa State's domestic debt has consistently risen since December 2015. Adamawa State recorded its highest domestic debt of 102.41 billion naira in December 2019. Its domestic debt rose from 89.66 billion naira in December 2018 to 102.41 billion naira in December 2019. Adamawa State's external debt has an upward trend. Its external debt rose consistently each year and peaked at $108.76 million in December 2019. Its external debt rose from $97.79 million in December 2018 to $108.76 million in December 2018. Its FAC allocated accounted for 77.89% of its total revenue, while its IGR was 22.11% of its total revenue. In our last state in review today, Rivers. Rivers State is located in the South-South region, also known as the Niger Delta Belt. It has as its governor Honorable Nyesom Wike of the People's Democratic Party. Rivers is characterized by large economic activities. It's the second state in Nigeria with the highest amount of total revenue earned in 2019. Massive, really massive. Its total revenue increased by 4.71% in 2019, which was 285.41 billion naira. That's 298.5 billion naira in 2019 from 285.41 billion naira in 2018. Rivers State recorded total FAC allocation of 158.45 billion naira and an IGR of 140.4 billion naira in 2019. Rivers State's major source of revenue was from pay and other taxes. In 2019, its pay earned was 101.09 billion naira, while its revenue earned from other taxes was 21.27 billion naira. Rivers State's domestic debt was upward trending from December 2015 to December 2019. Its domestic debt peaked at 266.94 billion naira in December 2019. Its domestic debt rose from 225.59 billion naira in December 2018 to 266.94 billion naira in December 2019. Rivers State has an upward trending external debt from December 2015 to December 2019. The external debt rose slightly by 0.19% from $78.28 million in December 2018 to $78.43 million in December 2019. And quickly, before we go to our last part, here's my take on the states so far from our analysis. The key things for the state is that the FAC is affected because of the twin shocks of the crude oil price shock and the global COVID-19 pandemic. That means the state governors have to now reinvent governance in a way that they can diversify the revenue. And that calls for robust economic planning for all the states of the Federation. Second, this is a time that we can work together as a nation and agree on fiscal restructuring. And one area is even in the FAC distribution. Currently, the federal government accounts for the highest, 52%, while states have 27% and local governments 21%. It may be time to review that distribution, with the states and local governments receiving higher than the federal government. In terms of resources, it's time for deeper resource control, and this fiscal restructuring should allow states to be on the concurrent list for issues like mining and resources. Because where there's mining opportunities for states, then from the north to the south, we can see states begin to utilize their resources and develop them and also deepen industrialization. In terms of ease of doing business, it's a must for all states to take it seriously, to create an environment for investors to come in and speed up activities like permits and sanctity of contracts. This is also an opportunity for state governments to leverage and invest more in their investment promotion, council activities, and one-stop shop for driving investments. And also, the political will for development and strategy must be taken up by governors. This is not a time for playing politics, but it's a time for real strategy to lead the economy and balance health and economy at this time of the pandemic. Those are very critical areas, and indeed, the digital economy must not be forgotten. In addition, the small and medium enterprises operating across states must receive support because they are also major drivers of the economy and among the highest employers of labor. This is a part of the thoughts. We'll continue to discuss this as we look at subnationals, which has become very imperative considering the times we're in. Let's move on to our last segment as we look at the last week engagement between fiscal and monetary authorities through a conference call. We want to bring to you their deliberations and, of course, the key highlights of that conversation, which involved the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, the Budget Office, and the Central Bank of Nigeria. Below are the key highlights of those discussions. In terms of fiscal understandings, the 2020 GDP growth of Nigeria expectations revised from 2.9% growth in pre-COVID-19 estimates now to 4.4% contraction. The federal government of Nigeria expects any recession to be short-lived, with a possible return to growth in the fourth quarter of 2020 or first quarter of 2021 at the latest, driven by improved harvest and productivity. The budget benchmark oil price is now $28 per barrel. Previously, it was $57 per barrel, while target productions is now 1.9 million barrels per day compared to 2.2 million barrels per day pre-adjustments. The budget exchange rate adjusted to 360 naira to a dollar from 305 naira to a dollar previously. The new expected fiscal gap for 2020 is approximately $13.8 billion compared to $7.1 billion initially. The removal of fuel subsidies, very important for Nigerians, is already in force. Next up is a transition to full cost reflective power tariff in 2021 as the government prepares for possible revenue weakness in the coming year. Notably, the oil benchmark price for 2021 is a conservative $35 per barrel. Funding government is very key, and here are the key steps for funding the government. The government aims to fund this shortfall using $5.5 billion of foreign borrowings, $6.1 billion of domestic debt, and $1.1 billion of project-tied loans. $700 million drawdowns from the special accounts and $400 million from the privatization proceeds. Due to tilts towards domestic and concessionary borrowing, debt service is estimated to increase by 200 billion naira. Nigeria has no plans to ask for debt forgiveness. The already obtained $3.4 billion International Monetary Fund facility forms part of the proposed foreign borrowings for 2020. The government aims to acquire a further $1.5 billion from the World Bank, $500 million from the African Development Bank obtained for $288.5 million already, and $100 million from the Islamic Development Bank. The government is confident of closing its projected fiscal deficit of $13.8 billion and balance of payment shortfalls of $14 billion for 2020. And looking at the monetary expectations, retreat to safe haven assets is likely to sustain capital outflows, so the Central Bank of Nigeria will aim to close balance of payment shortfall with a combination of reserves and funding from multilateral lenders. The CBN will continue to pursue the unification of currency rates around the NAFEX window. CBN policies have continued to drive growth in the credit creation, showing plus 20.5% between April 2019 and April 2020 growth. CBN believes that the banking sector remains adequately capitalized with adequate buffers to withstand shocks. In response to COVID-19, CBN has granted regulatory forbearance to banks in assessing loans to firms that are significantly affected by the economic impact of the spread of the virus. Such firms are likely to be offered a moratorium on loan obligations and restructuring opportunities. So far, the CBN has disbursed $107.3 billion naira to support local manufacturing and production across critical sectors. In an interactive session, the CBN assured that foreign portfolio investment will get their monies in an orderly manner. Big word for the FPIs, the investors. And then the CBN made reference to 2016 where no investor lost money. So strong assurances from the fiscal and monetary authorities, which should go a long way to bring a reaction from the investment community across the country and the globe. And that will be all for the Economy and Politics show this morning. It's a brand new week. We're looking forward to very interesting interactions on policy investments, analysis, and the economy developments in the country and politics. Stay on and join us every 9 a.m. through this week as we bring you incisive reports, presentations, and experts to discuss around these issues. Don't forget 10 a.m. We'll continue a conversation on the market review. Brand new week. A lot of things happening in the capital and financial market as it relates to the economy. Till we come your way again, thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Stay safe.